Welcome to Ideagen TV and the 2023 Global Leadership Summit. Today I am honored to have our wonderful friend and colleague, Jane Oates, President of WorkingNation, joining us live. Jane, welcome.
George, thank you. I'm so happy to be with you.
You know, Jane, always great to be with you and so exciting to hear from you on the trends in the workforce in 2023. What's new with you and WorkingNation?
Well, we had a great 2022. So we have high expectations for an even better 2023. And to give you a sneak peek at a couple of things, we did for the first time last year look at people with disabilities, hiring people with disabilities, and really excited that we'll continue that work in 2023. I think it's a fairness issue. People should be hired because of their skills, not ignored because of having a factor affect them that could affect any one of us.
You know, that's so true. It's just amazing when you shine a light on an inequity or an issue that folks may or may not be, understanding of.
Mhm.
And sometimes when you highlight it and bring it to the fore, it will be addressed.
Yeah.
At least that's the hope, right? And so I'd love for you to be able to discuss some of the trends you see present in the workforce and how WorkingNation is responding to those trends.
So there's so much going on, right? For the first time in a long time, people are really focused on talent and talent acquisition and retention. But I'll talk about three things. One is definitely a strong move towards skills-based hiring. Degrees, college degrees, 2 and 4 year graduate degrees, always going to be important. But clearly, some people just don't have the inclination, the interest, or the money to do that. But they do have skills. And I think this will continue to be another year where more employers are looking at defining the skills necessary for a job and then looking for people that have those skills who may not have a college degree attached to it. So that's going to continue to be a big one. I think DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and now belonging is going to become an even bigger issue this year. As we struggled last year with many employers trying to be able to retain their talent, obviously this year we're hearing big numbers about people laying off, but the war for talent is still alive and well. And giving access to people who didn't have access before, women, people of color, people who may have had a blip in their legal record, people with disabilities, all of those folks, are going to get a better shot, I think, in 2023. And finally, George, I would say to you, and this is one where I don't have an answer, but we're going to struggle again in 2023 as we hopefully put COVID in the rearview mirror with this idea of remote work. I mean, obviously, people are settling that remote work may morph hybrid work with some time in office buildings and some time in the luxury of your own home. But the reality is, over half of the people working today in the United States don't have the ability to work remotely. They're teachers, they're nurses, they're the people who build things in our manufacturing plants. They're people driving goods from where they're manufactured to the stores where we can purchase them. They can't work remotely. They have to be upfront, face fronting, and present. So, what kinds of flexibilities will an employer who employs both kinds of workers, those that can work remotely and those who can't, what kinds of flexibilities in 2023 will they offer those workers who can't work remotely so they can retain them?
You know, that's such an incredible hot button issue, let's call it
Mm,
that, in terms of
mhm.
where do we land? So we went through, March of 2020. In January of 2020, you and I had a conversation and we
Yeah.
were looking at the 10-year span relating to the global goals of the United Nations, those
Yeah.
17 global goals that we know were unanimously agreed to by all 193 member states. Decent work and opportunity being one of those goals, by the way, as you know. And so In March of that year, the whole world experienced, perhaps for the first time in human history, this global pandemic: shutdown, uncertainty, fear, and change. And here we are, approximately 3 years later, and emerging, thankfully,
Thank
from the
God, yeah.
pandemic. But the shift, the fundamental shift in the work and the way people work has been truly unprecedented. I mean, did we ever think that we would go from 5 day a week work weeks for most folks, commuting, hour or more of traffic every day each way, to working from home Mondays and Fridays at minimum? And what do you see as the productivity piece? Have we lost productivity? Are we gaining? And who's ultimately going to decide where we land? Will it be the employers or the employees, or a mix?
So, I think the productivity question is still out for judgment. I think that some people are saying, we were just as productive working from home as we were working in a team. I think where a lot of employers, first of all, I think the big pressure is how do we bring our cities back? Without the robust attention of workers, federal, private sector, nonprofit, buying lunch, taking their clothes to the dry cleaner. These businesses in downtowns all over the country are shuttering. And I think there is an urgency to bring people back so that those businesses can either hold on or come back. So I think that economic reality is a big push. I think the other thing that I worry about, George, and you and I both came from an environment where, because we worked in teams when we both worked on the Hill, other people saw our work ethic, they saw the quality of our work product, and they brought us into meetings when our job title may not have gotten us access to those meetings, but our hard work did. I really worry that if you're not face to face with some of your managers, you're not going to be recognized for the wonderful worker that you are, and whether a professional or a blue collar, white collar, no collar, it doesn't make a difference. And, I particularly worry for people who are new to that environment. Always worry about women, always worry about people of color, but really in this case, worry about younger people and the older worker, who sometimes can be a little bit invisible on any workplace. But now, when you only see them on a Zoom, how do you know that they're still energetic and vibrant and really enthusiastic about the work? So I do worry about that. And, I'm fine with hybrid work, but there has to be some coming together. And by the way, I won't let it go without saying this. Managers, we've got to devote some time to managers in 2023. We threw them into this remote work cycle with no training on how to support workers, on how to manage people's time, on how to manage teams remotely. We really need to give them some professional development this year, or they're all going to burn out.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, and these are, I can't thank you enough personally and professionally for your leadership on these issues, because, look, you were assistant secretary for employment and training at the Department of Labor, and you have done so much in your work on the Hill and beyond, and you're just getting started, I know. But, but, but these issues are seismic shifts. And I think what you're talking about relates so well to the topic of this Global Leadership Summit, because we're talking about global leadership. And it's going to take leadership, your leadership and your colleagues' leadership, and these voices that have seen and know the potential and the issues and the upsides and the downsides of everything that you're talking about, both economically, on the professional work front. Yeah, sure, things are great. You've worked and you're now in an upper level of your career, and it's just fine working from home. But like you said, what about that younger worker who now can't? You can't have a sidebar to say, you know what, maybe you should consider doing this. You're not really going to have those sidebar conversations
That's
on
right.
Teams or any other platform, right? So it takes me to the question on leadership. Jane, what do you believe are the most pivotal, the most absolutely important, vital elements of leadership?
So I think, first of all, a leader has to be an incredibly good listener. They have to listen to the people around them. They have to be able to hear what they're saying and to actually form it not only into a problem statement, but into a solution. And we look to leaders all the time for solutions. Sometimes we don't get very far, but I think that that skill of listening is unfortunately a dying art right now. That leader has to be able to build a team and hear the needs of the people on that team, and then give that team the authority to move forward on their own, to take their own steps in the direction of that solution that I mentioned. And finally, I would say to you, George, I think leaders have to be just a little bit humble. I mean, the last thing we need are for leaders to be talking about how great they are and forgetting all the people's work that went into making their success. So that humility is one that comes across to me. I'm always blown away when I meet someone in a position of leadership and hear how wonderfully honest they are about complimenting and including their team in everything that they win at.
That's so insightful and so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that because I know you've worked with some of the greatest leaders on the face of the planet. You have. And youth. I'd like to talk about the youth of not only the United States, but the world. How are you engaging youth to help empower them, to help address evolving issues, and prepare them for the absolute myriad of challenges ahead?
Well, I think the first thing that I say when I meet with young people is ignore all the noise. The angry, the vitriolic, the hateful stuff that's going on. I mean, it's frightening. I worry about young people today because they have grown up in such a culture of violence and disagreement, and in Georgia, I'm older than you are, but we both grew up in a time that was so much calmer. So I worry about that. I think that young people today need to work together. And, we've seen this in causes all across our country and all across the world. We've certainly seen it in environmental causes. We've seen it when we talk about dreamers. I'm so moved when I see young people of all ilks across this country, come together and say, we think that anyone who grew up here in the United States is an American, regardless of where they were actually born. If they grew up here, they're one of us. So I think keep that positive message going and understand that you're creating a world that we tried our best, but may not be leaving to you better than we found it.
So true.
Mm.
So true. And a lot of these issues take what you would probably refer to as political will. Um, you know, it's complicated, but inspiring to see the masses come together to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Let's just say that. And you as a leader, so you're a leader. You're leading. You're president of WorkingNation, one of the foremost organizations on work in the workforce and trends, and everything that you're working on is just so profound, relating to the United States and beyond. And so, how do you adapt as a leader with WorkingNation strategies to address evolving issues in the workforce?
Well, so it's such a good question, George, because even though Working Nation has a small staff, we mirror everyone else's work situation. We're a multi-generational staff. I work with people who are 30, 40 years younger than I am. And again, it comes to the point of listening. listening to how messages are heard, listening to platforms that really are more attractive to some age groups than others, and really saying what's the common denominator across all, because this is an amazing time in our workforce. I mean, it's the last 7, 8 years have been the only time in our history where there's been 5 generations working side by side in the workplace. That's amazing. So, you could laugh about it and say you have digital natives and digital dinosaurs, but you have people who never walked the earth without a microwave or a cell phone, and you have others who can talk about the evolution of telecommunications almost from the really olden days, but certainly they knew landlines, if not party lines. So, I mean, I think the interesting thing is to respect each other and to build on each other's strengths. So, if I'm not the best at technology, how can you help me? And if you're not the best at putting words into writing in a professional way, let me help you. And I think I see it so beautifully at Working Nation. I mean, we can kid each other about certain things, but when it comes to getting the job done, we complement one another, both compliment with an I and compliment with an E. And I definitely think the compliment with the I is too often ignored on the workplace. It's very important to tell people of all ages when they're doing a good job. And that you're doing a good job can come from young people to the older workers as well. I always love it when they tell me that I finally got, a hashtag right, or I finally took a picture in longitude versus latitude. I mean, it means something when they recognize that I learned from them.
Absolutely. And, the conversations we have each and every day tell us that, I think a lot of the folks, especially older folks, are underestimated in their abilities. And that goes to upskilling and all the things that we talk
Absolutely.
about. I mean, I think there's an absolute seismic shift taking place in work, in technology, then the applications of that to work. Um, you and I in our pre-interview talked a little bit about Chat GPT.
Right.
I've tried it. It's just a game changer for so many. What it will do to revolutionize content and content development, and who knows? I mean, it's just
Mhm.
unbelievable. So AI is going to be a big factor. And, I think what you're on the cutting edge of here is helping to see and share as a trusted source of information at Working Nation this critical moment in sharing that data and that information that can help folks navigate this. This is that pivotal moment. This is unprecedented change. Like you said, you and I, look, when we worked on the Hill 20 plus years ago, um, I don't know that there were even cell phones when I was there. I mean, it's like, yeah,
Blackberries,
yeah,
right? That
Blackberry.
was that was what you used.
So Blackberry. So like, and now look at where we are. It's like you can't put your phone down. Um, the phones today have more data on them than server rooms at that time. So we personally and professionally, I'm so grateful to you and Working Nation for helping to synthesize what is actually happening. Because again, you were at the fore, you were at the Department of Labor, you understand employment and training, you understand better than just about anyone on the planet what this all means, right?
Well,
And
and George, the important thing for people to realize is that automation and digitalization are coming to every job, everywhere. The waitress at the diner is no longer writing things on a pad with a piece of mimeo paper between it to make a copy. She's doing it, or he's doing it on a handheld device that's automatically put in, to the kitchen, and your order's timed. Your person at the store who's stocking shelves is no longer doing it the way we did it. They're doing it with RFID technology, so that the same way they're putting it up in the shelf, somewhere in the mainframe of the brain of that organization. Someone knows that 4 bottles of Coke just went off, and they need to make sure they order more of that. Inventory control is totally revolutionized. So I think people have to jump on board with digital training. They have to understand that, yes, we've all been saying lifelong learning for 30 years. But now the reality is lifelong learning is what you're going to have to do to keep your current job, let alone go on to another job. You're going to have to stay consistent. I heard the president of DeVry the other day giving a talk, and he said that they figured out that the average job is adding new technology at a rate of about 15% a year. So if that's true, that means you have to spend about 15% of your time learning new technology so you can be an active participant in an economy that's going to become more digital, more mechanized. You don't want to be left behind.
100%, and you can't be left behind. And I think that is, the responsibility of management and leadership, hence the leadership piece, to make sure, like you just did, make sure that we're reminding folks that the world is changing at a pace again that none of us have ever experienced. I mean, AI is a complete game changer, and
That's
you've
right.
got to stay on top of all of these things. The automation, in the retail industry, maybe now you have a kiosk instead of someone greeting you. Things are changing so fast, but someone still needs to manage that kiosk. Someone still needs to manage the technology. So maybe instead of being the person who was the cashier, you're now in the back room working all the data points around it. So you
That's right.
have to be able to adapt. There will still be jobs, but those jobs will be fundamentally different, to your point, perhaps.
Absolutely. And you mentioned data analytics. Our CEO always says, data analytics is going to be one of the fastest growing jobs for the foreseeable future because there isn't an aspect of any business, any nonprofit that's not analyzing their data, that's not collecting data, and that's not analyzing it. And what that would mean to me, going back to your question about young people, no young person should leave high school without knowing how to do an Excel spreadsheet. That is the foundational step to data analytics. You have to learn how to collect and organize data. And that should be the new ABCs. I mean, while technology is making our world more efficient in many ways, easier, safer, it is definitely challenging us to learn how to harness the use of that technology, to personalize learning, to make sure that the onerous jobs, I don't want to pick up, I never could pick up 100-pound weight. I don't want to do that. And I don't want to see anybody else do it because it's an OSHA violation waiting to happen, right? It's an accident waiting to happen. Let's instead make sure that person has the skills to program the computer to do that, to program the robot to do that.
Incredible. Incredible, Jane. And again, deep gratitude to you and WorkingNation for helping again to highlight. You're peering around the corner. You're seeing things that others may not be seeing at this moment, and you're helping to create that alert for employees and employers across the planet to say, you should be watching this. You need to be paying attention to this. And here's how you can help with the opportunity that's ahead. It's an opportunity, right?
And
And
it should be an
so
opportunity for all, not just the people lucky enough to have a network that warns them about it.
there you go. Hence you and WorkingNation. I love
Well,
it.
and thank you, George. Ideagen is a big help in getting our word out and such a great partner, a thought leader partner for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And so I want to focus on leaders and those giants. I know a few of them. Those giants that you specifically stand on the shoulders of.
Oh, well, George, the first, last, middle is the now deceased Senator Edward Kennedy. I mean, Senator Kennedy took a college researcher and made her into a policy wonk. He was the most generous of spirit person I have ever met. He believed in his staff more than he believed in anything else. He thought his staff could do anything. And he brought the best out in all of us. He was amazing. And that kind of leadership, I mean, clearly, there only get to be 100 US senators a year. So I don't want to make people, I found that same ethic, that same partnership, that same, learning arm in arm with Hilda Solis, who was my Secretary of Labor when I was at Employment and Training. A very different spirit, in terms of how she did things. She didn't necessarily have to be in the limelight. She wanted the job to get done and she wanted the best possible outcomes for people. But both of them shared, and it's what I really admired, the fact that they always wanted to know how the individual person was doing. If you think back, Senator Kennedy was not on the news every week. In fact, he made video appearance, TV appearances probably a few times a year when he wanted to get a big message across. I think I think that goes back to that humility I was talking about. Get the job done, get it done well. And we give those recognizable names while Senator Kennedy is gone. His name lives on. And Secretary Solis has gone on to become Supervisor Solis in Los Angeles County, still doing amazing work. But I also want to shout out, we all can't be the Secretary of Labor. We all can't be a senator. I just love learning from and being with leaders in my own community, the people who run the food bank at my parish, the people who do the after school reading program at my local library. I just think people who saw a gap, people who saw something that was missing, people who were hungry, kids who didn't have an adult to read with after school, and they filled the gap. That's leadership, right? You see something that's missing and you say, maybe I could fill that need. And George, what better way, to end our conversation than to say, if we want to be the country, if we want to be the world, if we want to be the people that we are meant to be, we should always be looking for that opportunity to fill in that leadership gap, because there are leadership skills in every one of us, whether anybody knows your name or not. You have the ability to be a leader in your community.
Jane Oates, President, Working Nation. You are my friend. Leadership defined.
George, only because I have friends like you. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation, and I look forward to many, many more.
Likewise, Jane. How can folks find out more about your work at Working Nation, and what is your call to action for our global audience?
So I would say, please come to our website, workingnation.org. Take a look at the content there and tell us your story. Tell us where our gaps are. Be a leader for us. We don't sell anything. We don't endorse anything. We just tell what we think are strong solutions to help people get the talent they need or to become the talent that they want to be. So join us, get in touch with us. Tell us what you think. Give us your opinion. And when you join us, we'll be better.
Jane Oates, President, Working Nation, workingnation.org. Check it out. You'll find the trusted source of information. And Jane, again, you are a leadership defined. You're changing the world. Thank you.
Thank you, George. See you soon.
Definitely.